Okay, for those who've been punctual and joined us on time, thank you very much. We might get underway. My name's Matt Paff. Some of you may remember me from a past life. There's a lot of people on the line today who are Attaché Access Group users, and I used to be the general manager there a number of years ago. My background has been in around the SalesMatrix product for about 20 years because of that relationship with Attaché. But I'll talk about that in a moment. Just to set the expectation on what today's about, wanted to update you all on who SalesMatrix is as an independent entity. Many of you will be familiar with Kim Leroy. Just wanted to sort of fill you in on where we're at in 2021. Kim's still very much in the picture, and we're blessed with Kim's presence all the way from Turkey on the call today. Today, I also wanted to cover off an overview of why SalesMatrix exists, who we help, and our entire product suite. It's quite obvious, particularly the Access Group clients of Attaché are not familiar with our whole suite generally, and I just wanted to cover that off. I'm going to focus on two of those products in our suite. We do have three, which I'll mention, SalesMatrix and SalesMatrix SWOT. I'm going to jump in and provide some overview on where we're at. If you need in-depth on both those products, there's subsequent sessions running later this week, which you should have seen on the invite. But today we will spend some time on SalesMatrix and some time on SalesMatrix SWOT to provide an understanding of those products and how it all fits together within the SalesMatrix ecosystem. So coming back to who I am the Managing Director of Asia Pacific. I work in with the directors in Europe and the US to bring the SalesMatrix product to market. We run a family business. My wife is also involved as operations manager. I'm the former general manager as Attaché, as I may have met many of you in the past. I was involved with Attaché for about 15 years before leaving there about 5 years ago. It's actually my reason that the Access Group had exclusive distribution of that product, or the SalesMatrix products. When I was there as general manager, I did a deal with Kim to distribute the product in the Asia Pacific region. Unfortunately, I left there 5.5 years ago, and possibly the product didn't get the focus it deserved. And as we're finding out since the 1st of January and the changeover to direct support, a lot of people haven't been using the product to the full extent and aren't sort of familiar with how they can leverage our product suite internally. My background in recent years, I've been running a couple of businesses. One of those is Apps for Wholesalers, which is very specific technology for wholesale businesses in Australia around inventory management and data management for typically larger, small to medium-sized businesses. Value Adders is another company of mine, which we do independent vendor selection projects, largely for that space. Apps for Wholesalers was an events business, and obviously because of COVID, events aren't what they used to be. So it freed up some time for me to get involved with Kim and Andre and get involved with the SalesMatrix company again. So from a product evolution perspective, just a bit of a background. SalesMatrix was born inside of a company called InMatrix in Melbourne around the year 2000. Kim Leroy, who has been the consistent head of the business, has been involved since the beginning, and Andre, who I'll mention in a moment, basically has been involved since 2000 as well. SalesMatrix went to market in about 2001, and it was born out of what's called the balanced scorecard and a focus on what's called the customer perspective. About 2008, InMatrix disappeared as a company, and Kim and Andre, there's Andre's face, basically picked up the company and took it to the world. Kim moved to Sweden and Andre to the US, and effectively continued to develop and promote the products globally. A product called SWOT, Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities and Threats, was launched as a Windows desktop application in 2011. That became an online browser-based solution in 2015 or thereabouts. And that's around the time I was general manager of Attaché and signed an exclusivity agreement to take that product to market. Some of you on the line may go, I don't know what SWOT is. That's fair enough, because the product hasn't necessarily been fully promoted in the market space. I'm glad to say that we've also in recent times launched a rebuild of that product as an Android, Apple iOS, and soon to be Windows application. And those mobile apps were launched in 2019. And the big change from 2021 onwards, everything is now done direct by SalesMatrix company, both in Australia and New Zealand. We have people on the ground, including some familiar faces. Those of you in the New Zealand market, the former general manager of New Zealand Attaché, Brent, is also involved with hands-on sales and support in that market. The other person there is my wife, who runs operations in Australia. So moving forward, rather than getting support for those of you using Attaché from Attaché, you'll get support directly from us. Our website in Australia and New Zealand is salesswot.com or salesmatrix.com.au. It goes to the same site. And on that website, you will find a link to support, to lodge support tickets. Or you can email us at support@salesswot.com. Or in Australia and New Zealand, you can call us for phone support. Why does SalesMatrix exist? Well, we're here specifically to target B2B inventory-based businesses who have an established repeat customer base and are generally servicing those customers with an account manager or a sales rep. That's who we're targeting, and that would, for the most part, fit everybody on the call. Our whole premise of what our product suite is about is that growth is a formula based on the acquisition of new customers, plus the retention of existing customers, and the attachment or upsell / cross-sell to those customers. Where SalesMatrix is really focused is we're not necessarily going to help you acquire new customers. We're going to hopefully help you focus on retention and attachment to a mature existing customer base. How do you understand your customers to be able to retain the revenue you currently have, but also look for opportunities to upsell and cross-sell to those same customers? Our products, we have three. Most of you will be aware of SalesMatrix as a product. Some of you will be aware of SWOT. Probably nobody is aware of our third product, which I'll mention. SalesMatrix is our mainstay product. It's been around for, as I mentioned, close to 20 years. It's a Windows desktop-based application, and it connects to any accounting system, not just Attaché, obviously, but it connects to any ERP, accounting, inventory management system. And it does that via lots of acronyms that, if they mean something to you, well and good, but just know that it connects to those systems. The thing about a product that is 20 years old, it's very mature and very feature-rich. And we're actually very aware that once you get very feature rich, you can actually make the product feel more complicated than it really is. And hence why the product SWOT was born. SWOT is designed to simplify the complex and make it easy and make it simple to do that attachment and upsell and retention of your existing customer base. And it does that in the environment that the sales rep is operating, typically their smartphone or tablet. So SalesMatrix SWOT is a smartphone or tablet application that takes the complex algorithms that have long underheld the reporting in SalesMatrix and delivers it in a simplified plain English, or to be honest, any language way, to be able to provide a sales rep a clear understanding of what they need to do to retain and upsell that customer. We also have so there's two elements of the SWOT product. There's a customer SWOT, so breaking down the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats by customer, but also a product SWOT. The customer SWOT is very much designed for reps and account managers, and the product SWOT is very much designed for warehouse managers, purchasing officers, marketing officers, etc. The third product in our suite is relatively new, and I'm effectively launching it here today. We do have the ability to customize dashboards. So the idea behind SalesMatrix and SWOT is to move away from traditional reporting and provide dynamic reporting that is in the language of the user and is dynamic so that it can be sliced and diced. But to some extent, our customers still want traditional style reporting, and dashboards are something that have become more and more popular in recent years. And so we've basically added to the kit bag where customers do want dashboards, we are able to customize and build those out. It's not something I'm going to cover off today because in effect, dashboards are what the beholder wants, not something that we're generically just going to deliver out of the box. It would involve a conversation to understand what you're after and your requirements, and effectively, once we understand, then we can provide a demonstration and really quote on it. But our point of difference is we want to take a traditional reporting approach and deliver it in the cloud in a low-cost mechanism compared to alternatives such as Microsoft Power BI or Tableau or Click or some of the other business intelligence products out there in the marketplace. As I mentioned before, we don't just integrate to Attaché, we integrate to a broad spectrum of solutions, and here's just some. Theoretically, we can integrate to any solution where the data is accessible, but we have clients using a raft of products in the marketplace, from inventory management solutions and ERP through to corporate solutions. We have a very broad sort of cross-section of out-of-the-box integrations these days. So one thing that has come up in our transition away from the Access Group is we have lost some clients over the years who've moved away from Attaché, but they weren't aware that the product was able to integrate to their new system. So we are able to go back to those customers and say, hey, we actually can integrate our product even though you no longer use Attaché. I want to go back to the beginning. There was a Harvard Business Review article in 1992 called The Balanced Scorecard. You may have come across it. It talks about that there's 4 aspects to every business. And the guys at Matrix at the start of the century basically realized an opportunity to build software to focus on that balanced scorecard. So they were set about building 4 software products to focus on the 4 areas of the balanced scorecard. They built a product called Optimist, which was wildly successful in the banking sector around financial perspective analysis and cash flow forecasting, etc. They built a product called People Matrix and another product called Process Matrix to focus on the learning and growth in internal business process areas. They probably weren't so successful. And then SalesMatrix was built to focus on the customer perspective of the balanced scorecard. So that was the underpinning of where these products were built. As I mentioned, SalesMatrix was built within the Matrix company and then spun away around the mid-noughties. SalesMatrix, which I want to focus on now, is our Mainstay original product, which most of you on the call are currently using or have used or have seen. It's a Windows desktop application. It's been around, best part of 20 years, and it's really functionally rich to the point that most of our users aren't actually really aware of the full capability. It's a little bit like Microsoft Excel. There's statistics out there about what usage Microsoft functionality actually has, and it's a very low percentage. If we were to do a usage percentage on the features and functions of SalesMatrix, I'm sure it's probably into the single digits of the full breadth of the functionality of that product. And hopefully today is about starting to enlighten you on the full capabilities of that product. The first thing to understand about SalesMatrix is it connects to your ERP accounting system through what's called an SQL script. I'm not going to delve into what SQL is today. Just understand that it runs what's called a query against your database and pulls out the key data to be able to build a database that can then be sliced and diced and dissected. So it's going to pull out your customers and your products. It's going to pull out your sales channels. Those sales channels are most often your sales reps or account managers. They can also be your physical locations. They can be online versus offline sales, etc., etc. It also obviously pulls out the individual transactions, which the transactions are comprised of information such as quantity and date and price. All that information is stored within your accounting system. For most people on the call, that's Attaché. For those of you who are using Attaché, it's very important to understand that the full power of SalesMatrix and SWOT, mind you, really is leveraged by the way your data is configured within Attaché. And the better your grouping, the better the cross-sell, upsell opportunities become. So your customers and products, there's fields within the Attaché system that you could be using that would enable you to create groups or subgroups that group like for like. Once we understand what like for like is through a grouping scenario, that then will inform the artificial intelligence engine, which then helps improve the suggestive selling. So those of you using attaché accounts or attaché BI, effectively you've got fields such as the sort field against the customer, the sales rep, the territory, the category, the price level, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a number of fields we can use, including the custom fields, to be able to group your customers. The same applies to the products. There's fields that are obvious, like product groups and supplier 1, 2, and 3, but there's some less than obvious fields like the cash register department. You're probably not using cash register in attaché, so you can leverage functions like the cash register department field as a drop down of another grouping method for your products. There's also things like default cost centers, which you may not use, which can be used as a method of grouping. Your custom fields, your dimensions, there's lots of ways that we can group the products. Thinking about how you do your grouping then will inform the intelligence of both SalesMatrix and SWOT is an important thing to consider. We can help you with that. The benefit is that, I've worked with attaché for a very long time, and we can help you with your groupings if you do need help in that area. I just want to also make the point, those of you who have upgraded from attaché accounts to attaché BI, and this is very attaché-centric webinar. I appreciate that for those who aren't on attaché, but those who are on attaché BI, we have found that the BI database uses what's called SQL views and tables. Now, I don't want to get too technical. Those who understand this will understand what I'm talking about, but just understand that if your script hasn't changed between the upgrade from attaché accounts to attaché BI, then it's probably looking at the SQL views. There are problems with the SQL views in attaché BI we have found, and the number one problem is speed. The number two problem is also reliability. So what we strongly suggest is people upgrading the script that pulls the data from attaché BI to use the SQL tables rather than views. Now, if that doesn't mean anything to you, that's well and good, that's fine. Most people on the call have no idea what I'm talking about. But I just want to flag it, and I want to offer our help to actually make sure that your system is operating properly. So what we'll offer, and this is a takeaway from today, is I will offer a free review of your current script that's pulling the data out of attaché, and make sure that it's leveraging groups effectively and it's looking at the tables rather than the views. If that sounds like something that you would like me to look at, and it's a free of charge service, there's my email address. Whilst you're on this webinar, feel free to send me an email and say, yep, Matt, these are a couple of days and times that suit me to have a review of what we're using the groups in attaché for, or the script and the way it's pulling out the tables. I don't have to get into the technicality of it if it doesn't mean anything to you. We can make it better than it's probably running for you at the moment. So getting back to SalesMatrix, what SalesMatrix does is it builds something called an OLAP cube. And again, the software industry has a habit of making technical terms out of things that aren't overly technical. OLAP cubes are pretty cool though. What they do is they build data in a way that you can slice and dice it, that you can't currently do in your ERP system. Things that can't be done because of the proprietary nature of the database in attaché, we're able to pull out into SalesMatrix, and we can slice and dice in a way that makes that data more meaningful, particularly to a sales manager. The other thing that I really want to emphasize here is most attaché customers we've spoken to in the last couple of weeks aren't aware that we can automate the updates. So there is a process of taking the data out of attaché to build the OLAP cube, which means it's not going to be in real time, and it can't be because of the nature of this OLAP cube. But what it means is that we can actually schedule an auto update. And a lot of our clients aren't familiar with the fact that that update can be automated, and they're waiting minutes, hours to basically manually perform that update. Now, understand that we can set that up to run automatically, particularly on your server, so that when you log into SalesMatrix, the data is always up to date. That can be done across multiple data sets. SalesMatrix doesn't have to be limited to a single data set, and we can slice and dice in multiple views in multiple ways across different companies or within the same company across multiple OLAP cubes. So the important thing is to leverage the best out of SalesMatrix is that we set up things like automated updating, and then we also make sure that we're getting the groupings the way we want, so that you've got multiple data sets potentially that are slicing and dicing the data in multiple ways. Hopefully that makes sense. If you want automatic updates, it does take a little bit of messing around with Windows to get this set up. Happy to send you the instructions for free to use what is called Windows Task Scheduler to schedule that task. I will send you an email with a link to the instructions. If you just want us to take care of it and set it up and get it working, we would charge $99 per data set to get that for you as a flat fee. It can be finicky. It may take us several hours. It may take us 20 minutes. We don't know, but to give you assurance on getting that set up for you, we will just do a flat fee, $99 to get those data set up for it. If that's of interest, if you'd like the data set automatically updated, send me an email and suggest some days and times, and we can basically schedule something in for you. Okay. Continue on SalesMatrix. The current version that's been distributed by the Access Group would be version 5.5. And there's a couple of versions out there, A, B, C, whatever. It doesn't really matter. The key point to know is that we're about to release version 6. I'm about to jump into the product. And when I jump into the product, I'm going to show you using version 6. And I'm going to highlight some of the changes, not just a branding change, like you may see attaché within your current product. We've obviously removed the attaché branding from it, but there's also other changes that I'll highlight in the version 6. I also want to highlight that there's actually 2 different licenses of SalesMatrix. A full license, which can perform the data updates, be that automatic or manual, and a viewer license, which can view the data that's been created by a full license. There's different pricing around that. Simple terms, a full license, $100 a month. The viewer license is $50 a month. But that enables you to give more users within the organization the ability to look at SalesMatrix and do analysis of your sales data. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into SalesMatrix. I'm going to basically switch screens, and basically we're going to run into some training around how to use the modern product and show you the differences with version 6. So just bear with me while I swap screens. And I come to that. Okay. This is SalesMatrix version 6, some new colors and a bit of a fresh update. Those of you who have got the automated updating set up, you'll basically have your data sets listed, and you just need to go okay, and that will be the latest data as at typically about midnight last night. If you want to run your own manual refreshes, typically what we do is we hit new. We'll have a series of different scripts written based on how you want to slice and dice the data, and then I basically would run that update. I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to basically go back to my recent list, and I'm going to jump into the sample data. Now, important point is when I jump into the sample data, the screen that it defaults to is actually an option. I've got this going through to my opportunity navigator, but you may have it going through to a particular grid view, etc. So understand that what I've just opened up into by default is an option, and I'll show you where the options are within the system. Because I've got the Opportunity Navigator open, I wanted to explain what you're looking at. The Opportunity Navigator really was the start of Kim's thinking around how do we simplify SalesMatrix for the average sales rep who's not technical, who's not a data person. Maybe we can put some cues in plain English to take them to the right part of SalesMatrix to get the key information. So when you're looking at the Opportunity Navigator here, here's some plain English ways of getting to the particular area of SalesMatrix that is thought to be most relevant for upselling or understanding my customer and product mix. I'm not going to jump into any of those today. We might do some of that in the advanced session tomorrow. I'm going to jump down to, you'll see there's a tab here on the right, which is results. This is something that a few people I've spoken to in the last week haven't been aware of, but effectively SalesMatrix has this ability to give you a comparison year to year, month to month on how things are performing, and then traffic light that for you. So I've just jumped in and it's compared 2020 to 2019 for all of my data. And it's traffic lighting that, hey, our revenue grew by 21%. Our actual cost of revenue has also grown. So our margin has actually dropped. So whilst we made more revenue, we didn't make more money. And so it starts to basically break out that information and then comes down into key performance indicators. Key performance indicators you can pull directly from sales textbooks, and understand that, you know, these are the sort of things that drive improvement in sales within an organization. That is, increase the revenue per sales reps and you'll generally increase the revenue overall. Increase the number of products that you're selling per customer and generally you'll increase overall, et cetera, et cetera. So these KPIs are around identifying those key performance indicators that are driving growth within the organization. Just to let you know, the focus 80% and products 80% focus, that's about how many of your customers or products make up 80% of your revenue, because there's an old rule of business. 20% of your customers is 80% of your revenue. And this is, you know, starting to show, well, how many of our customers make up 80% of our revenue? There is an argument to say that you should have an increasing number of customers making up 80% of your revenue to minimize risk of losing big customers. But people read that in different ways. I do note on this screen, I can view specific customers, product sales reps, or groups of customers, product sales reps, but you can see there that it's allowing me to do the comparisons. I can also compare, well, can we see how we went in December 2020 to, the month of December 2020? Compare that to, I'll pick February. Compare February 2020 to February 19, or compare February to March. I can compare any periods and just see how performance is actually trending. The other tab I want to show you here is best of breed. Best of breed is all about my top 20. If I want to have a look at my top 20 customers, my top 20 products, and I want to look at that by revenue, margin percentage, units for a particular month or a particular period or particular year, I can do that. So I'm seeing here my top 20 customers by revenue in the year 2020. My number one customer is Life Supplements, but isn't that interesting? I make a negative margin on getting all that revenue. So let's have a look at our top 20 customers by margin. And there we go. And we actually see who our best customers are, the ones that are actually funding the business. Great Earth is actually our top customer when I get rid of the vanity metrics of revenue and I focus on the actual metrics of margin. Again, I can slice and dice this for particular regions, for particular groups of products or customers, and I can start to see those top 20 as a really high-level way to review my business. At any point, I can copy these out to Excel and you know, send them on to my reps. But it's a very interesting helicopter view of how my business is performing. I'm just going to basically close out of the Opportunity Navigator now. And this is the view that most of you will be familiar with, though it may look slightly different to what you've got, because this is version 6. So the first thing I'm going to highlight with version 6 is the icons have all been updated, and there's a couple of new icons that come to the top. One thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is that we actually hide some of the icons. So by default, we don't show all the icons. That was, again, Kim looking at ways that we can keep this product simple and so it doesn't overwhelm people with the full functionality. I tend to think that, you know, hey, if people aren't aware of what icons are there, then they're missing out. So one thing I'll show you is the icons along the top. If I come to the left of the most left version and I hit the right mouse click, you'll actually see all the list of icons that are available. The ones that are grayed out like this one and this one and this one and this one, they're not actually showing in my icon list at the moment. So I might want to show undo and redo. And now I've got those icons now showing within my list of icons at the top. One thing I tend to get people to do when they're starting to use SalesMatrix is to turn this stuff on. Kim, if you're on the line, you may have a disagreement with this, but I tend to like to show icons even just for the sake of people being curious about what the product is capable of. You will see now with the version 6, we've got an extra row or an extra 3 icons here on the left. This will not be in your current version. The idea behind these icons is pretty simple. It's to make it simple to navigate and save what you're looking at. We have this idea of favorites. I might have sliced and diced SalesMatrix, ran certain analysis reports and got to a certain point and effectively want to get back there next time I log into SalesMatrix. Well, the idea is that I can actually create a favorites view. You'll see down the bottom here that I can save into favorites view. By putting the icon up the top now, it makes it nice and easy for you to be able to save to the favorites view, but also be aware that there's a favorites view there. Think of your favorites view like a dashboard or just a collection of key analysis reports within SalesMatrix that you want to get back to in the future. Next to it is effectively the view of what I've always taught people to use, the right mouse click. So if you come into the grid area, anywhere in yellow and right mouse click, you'll see that a whole heap of options come up, and most of you will be aware of that. What we've now done is we've moved that also to here. So if you want to change your axes, I can change in the same way I'm right mouse clicking in the grid area and it's making up parts of that right mouse click. I'm now very clearly getting the ability to change my axes. I can make my products by customer view, customers by period, all these sorts of things are now very simple to see. One thing I'll bring to your attention is the system will generally, unless you've changed the option, default to showing the most recent 12 months. A lot of people aren't aware that you can select all periods and you can have more than 12 months. You can have more than 2 years. It's all about the way that the data and the scripts are set up and the way that you're viewing that data. So I've just basically changed to show 24 months. The other thing that I can change is what makes up the numbers within the grid. So you'll see from the icon that I can change what is in the X and Y axis, but I can also change what is in the grid. Effectively, again, this has been something we've taught with the right mouse click, but I can change going from looking at revenue to looking at units. So very quickly, rather than looking at revenue, I'm now looking at the units that I'm selling. I can also right mouse click to do that same thing. I want to look at margin as a dollar value. I may want to look at margin as a percentage. I may want to look at, I can slice and dice and make up what is in this OLAP cube slice through that middle grid section. Again, through the right mouse click or through the new icons in version 6. Important point also is you'll notice the left side of the screen. The left side of the screen can be looked at as a filter on the right side of the screen. So if I want to look at, for example, a particular product, I can come into my list of products and I can just look at the sales by customers by period for just that product. So what it does, it puts a filter over the grid and allows me to filter on that. I can also do that. What it's effectively doing is that this grid is only ever 2 dimensions, this by this, unless I go into quadrant view, which we'll talk about later. What it allows me to do is bring in a 3rd dimension as a filter that allows me to restrict what I'm seeing within the grid. The other thing that I can do within the categories area is I can consolidate. So from the left grid, I can, rather than look at individual customers, I can now start to look at by groups of customers. And this is the names of my groups in Attache. It might be the sort field in Attache. It might be the territory field. Whatever the groupings are within your script can then come through to here. You may want to separate your retail customers from your wholesale customers. You may want to separate your pharmacies from your bakeries. These are the sort of groupings that our customers are using. We've got a lot of customers in the food service industry, and they might separate out their independent service supermarkets from their health food stores or their corporate supermarkets, etc. The other thing I can do by clicking on the plus is I can look within a particular category. So you see here, I've got one which is bakeries. I'm then looking at all the bakeries only. I'm not looking at any other customer, but the customers that are grouped as bakeries. The other way here is Go Vital. I have a buying group or a chain or a franchise called Go Vita, and effectively I'm looking at the sales from each of the Go Vita stores. So the idea of the left menu is to filter, but it's also to group. You'll also see that there's groupings that run along the top. So those groupings will apply depending on what's on my axis across the top. For periods, the groups are typically quarterly and yearly. And I can basically consolidate down by that. It's at this point, I also raised the fact, because it came up with one of our clients in the last week, that yes, we default the grid and the periods to months, but that is also part of the script and also part of the options in the way you set up SalesMatrix. If daily or weekly report reporting is more important to you, then we can actually configure the periods to come in that way, or we can configure this thing up here called alternate periods. If I turn on alternate periods, it's now looking at it in a week view where I've got the alternate periods configured. So it's looking at week 40 of the year 2020, week 41 of the week 2020. So we can configure SalesMatrix to work not just in terms of months, quarters, years. We can work in terms of days, weeks, fortnights, whatever you need it to work on, we can configure to work the way that you need your analysis to work. The next thing I wanted to show, and it's one of the most common features used within SalesMatrix, is the traffic lights. Traffic lights are used based on mathematics. You may have done it in about year 9 maths, which was this thing called standard deviation. Mathematically, it puts your sales on a bell curve, and it will basically look for things that are outside a standard deviation of the bell curve. I'm not going to explain standard deviation today. I'm just going to say Google it if you want to familiarize yourself with it. But the idea is that we traffic light your data, and the traffic lights are red is bad, i.e. it's outside of what is expected, outside the bell curve, to the negative. Bright green is good. It's more than one standard deviation outside this bell curve to the positive. Light green is positive. It's better than average. Amber is average, and orange is below average. So that's what the traffic lighting is doing. The best thing about the traffic lighting is that when you've got a screen full of numbers, it will draw your attention to specifically anomalies that you may not have otherwise seen. You're going to switch off those traffic lights. I do, mind you, I should have mentioned, the sensitivity of the traffic lights can be controlled up the top here. So it's using one standard deviation to determine the colors. You can slice and dice that to recalculate based on 1.5 standard deviations to determine the coloring. That's getting pretty complicated, but just be aware that it is available. The next thing I wanted to show really was a key driver for the SWOT product. When I'm looking at my customers by period as an example, I may want to basically find out more about some key customers. I've just sorted my grid. I click once for ascending, twice for descending. I've now got my main customers by margin at the top of the grid. I may want to have a look at Great Earth Elizabeth Street. I double click on Great Earth Elizabeth Street, and it's going to bring up our intelligence screen, and it's going to give me more detailed information just about that specific customer. So it's going to give me a breakdown by month of revenue, margin percentage, transaction, all in one screen. And again, I can copy that out, I can email it. That's a great screen for giving me detailed information about this particular customer and the sort of revenue and performance of that organization. I can see that March 20 was a really good month for those guys, which does align with COVID. So Kim, you've done well with the sample data there. If I have a look at the properties, this is telling me how the groupings are coming out of Attaché, or how I've got the groupings, and it can also bring in contact information. The thing that is of utmost importance here and very interesting, and for those of you who are familiar with SWOT, you'll see where SWOT was started to be born out of, is the intelligence area. This is where the real power of SalesMatrix and the artificial intelligence engine comes in. I can do a category comparison. So what are customers within the same type? So these guys are in a type called Great Grocer. So other customers within the type Great Grocer are buying all these products, but these guys have never bought those products. Other customers in the same region, which is the Southeastern region, are buying these products that these guys don't buy. So we're looking for opportunities for upsell, opportunities for cross-sell within that customer base. The other thing is about, we mentioned attachment, we also mentioned retention. What are the products that they've stopped buying off us? They used to buy off us, but they haven't bought in the last 3 months, 6 months, 2 months, 1 month. These are the products that they've stopped buying off us. Market basket opportunity. The best way, look, I worked at McDonald's when I was at school, and we always were taught to upsell. Would you like fries and a Coke with that? McDonald's know that 83% of the time you buy a Big Mac, you are going to buy fries and a Coke with it. There is a direct correlation between a Big Mac, fries, and a Coke. What this has just done is it just run a market basket on all the products that this customer is buying, and it's looked for direct correlation for where they're buying the Big Mac, but not the fries or the Coke. And in this case, nothing has met the sensitivity or the confidence level. The confidence level defaults to around 30%. So I'm basically saying, well, there's nothing, they're not buying the Big Mac, but not buying the Coke in that particular case. But if I was to pick another customer, say go via Werribee, and I was to run that same analysis, I think you'll find that there basically are some market basket opportunities where they're buying the Big Mac, but not the fries and the Coke. The thing that I always make people understand is some of these correlations are not always obvious. There was some studies done recently, a couple of years ago in the US around correlation of products purchased in a supermarket. I've picked one where there was no correlation. But hear me out. There was basically, the supermarkets found that the number one most correlated sale item with nappies, or what they call diapers in the US, was actually beer, which they went, well, how does that happen? Well, ironically, what would happen is the wife or the husband would ring their significant other on the way home and say, can you bring home some nappies? And they'd drop into the supermarket, they'd buy the nappies, and while they're there, pick up a six-pack on the way home. So there was a direct correlation that no one had actually considered before. It's not like crumpets and golden syrup or bacon and eggs. This was a correlation that existed. And this is what SalesMatrix is doing in the market basket analysis. Top products is what are the main products that this customer is buying off me by revenue margin and units, and what were the last sales that this customer had made by date, and what products did they actually make. So that same analysis applies to products. So if I change the view, I should use the new icons to change the view. If I change the view now to products by period, for example, that same intelligence works on my products. So I can see where my upsell opportunities are on a particular product. So if I look at the organics, I picked one with a funny name. If we look at market basket analysis, this product has a direct correlation with all of these products. So 47% of the time I'm selling the Mary, I'm also selling the lavender. So effectively 1 in 2 times. This one's even better. If I'm selling the Condar, the Pu'er basically is 55% of the time to the same customer on the same day we're selling these products. So that market basket analysis applies here. Also, when I'm looking from a product perspective, which customers have stopped buying this product? So if I've got a slow moving item within my warehouse, it's a good way for me to find out who has stopped buying it and why all of a sudden this product isn't trending the way it used to trend. Look, today with SalesMatrix is more about an overview and to really show you the power of the system. There's just 2 more things I wanted to show today. Obviously, tomorrow's session, an hour on SalesMatrix, we'll cover in more detail. But one of the most powerful buttons in SalesMatrix is this assessments area. And these are, again, assessments that have been built up over 20 years of understanding B2B wholesale stock and data type businesses and the sort of information that helps them with upsell, cross-sell, and retention. So all of these particular analysis that Kim and the team have built are about, well, where are we looking for opportunities? How are we retaining our customers? So for example, I want to have a look at my customer retention. Now, 2020 was a crazy year and certain industries have boomed and others have been really hard affected. I might want to have a look at which customers we've gained, which customers we've lost, and actually really drill into that. I can run an assessment, and in my assessment here, 16% of my customers are brand new in the last 6 months. I've seen 27% of my existing customers have increased what they've bought off us, 6.9% have decreased what they bought off us, and we've actually lost 6.6% of our customers. If I want to actually see who those are, I can actually save it as a grouping of my customers. So I might come in here and I'll save it against one of the groups, recalculate, and then when I go out and I'll have a look at a customer's view, let's call it customers by period, you'll see now that I've got a grouping called retention. If I look at a higher level on my retention, something obvious comes to light. The customers who've increased what they bought off us are the ones that make us the most money. If I want to drill in and see who the customers are that have increased what they bought off us, retained and increased, These are the customers who have increased their purchases. Who have I actually lost? These guys have stopped buying off us in that period, etc. So the assessments area is very, very powerful way, and it allows you to create groupings that aren't in your ERP or attaché system. Basically, it will dynamically create these groupings to have further analysis on your data. The other area that I wanted to highlight was the focus. Every business, there's been this talk of the 80-20 rule, and I cannot tell you how often the 80-20 rule absolutely applies. But the focus button, you used to have to be in a customers by product view. I can now basically run this assessment from anywhere. What it's doing, it's defaulted to the top 25% of my products, and 25% of my customers represents 77% of my margin and 48% of my revenue. Effectively, what you're looking at here is the ability to slice and dice that focus and really drill in on who your top customers and products are, or vice versa. You'll see the ability to view the inverse focus as well as the focus. If we just have a look at Kim's sample data here, we take that out to 100% of products and down to 20% of customers. You'll see 20% of my customers and 100% of my products represent 79% of my margin. And that is fairly consistent across most businesses. What this would allow me to do is hit view focus. And when I jump out, what it's going to do is it's going to limit my data to just those customers. There's something we've got to fix, Kim, if you're online. Your icons are going over top of the limit. What is behind here tells me what I've actually focused in on. We haven't released this version yet. It is in testing mode, and we will have picked that up. But effectively, it will tell me that it's limited to the top 79% of my revenue, of my margin, sorry, and the number of customers that made up. And now I'm focusing in on the key area. So focus is a really good area for focusing your attention. I'm just conscious of time. I'm going to leave SalesMatrix there for now. If you want a more in-depth around SalesMatrix, please attend tomorrow's session if you can. Otherwise, reach out. One thing I've got to show, I'm just looking at my notes. There is a brand new feature that if you want to run a live refresh on your data, you can actually now do it from within the data set. So you don't have to exit SalesMatrix and then go back to the main screen. You will now have this refresh button that sits in. If there's a reason why you need it refreshed as of now, because there's been some sales made today and you want to know what's happened today, then there is this new refresh button, which is fantastic. The other thing I need to show within version 6 that didn't exist before, if I go to my options, and there's two ways to get to options. I can do that from my icons, or I can go tools options. That's the icon there, by the way. If I come across to I think it's the descriptions tab, I can now actually describe what I see. In this example, I'm looking at customers by their name, but a lot of people actually want customers by their customer code. So what we're able to do here is we can actually, without changing the script, we can change what we see in the grid. So I'm going to say, I want to see their name and their code. And what it will do is basically next time I've refreshed this is basically going to show me the name and the code within the grid area. The same applies to the products. If I come here, I don't just want to see the product description. I want to see the code and the name for the product. So if I go and basically change now to a products by period view, you'll now see that I've got the product code and the product description both showing in the grid. So that's a new feature in version 6. It could be done in the earlier versions by modifying the script, but what that meant is that your data set was hard-coded like that. You couldn't change on the fly like I've just done. So that's a nice new feature. Okay, so again, I'm going to swap screens and get back to my SalesMatrix presentation, and we're going to continue with the session and just explain particularly the SWOT product next. Bear with me a moment. I've just got a little did you know there. SalesMatrix, as the name suggests, is about sales, but one of the best use cases I've seen is actually reviewing your purchasing data. So the purchasing manager, the warehouse manager, we can actually change the script to pull in your purchases so that you can actually be reviewing your data based on what you've bought over time, and then run trend analysis on your purchases, see which suppliers are trending up, which suppliers, and it can actually help with your price point negotiation with your suppliers. So that's a really good way of leveraging SalesMatrix, is to actually think outside the box and leverage it from a purchasing perspective. Again, that's just another data set or script that we run. Moving on, the next product I did want to talk about, we're only going to run this relatively quickly, is the Sales SWOT product. We're going to run a session on Thursday in depth around SWOT, but the idea behind SWOT was what I've just covered in SalesMatrix can be overwhelming. There's so much to that product, and to be honest, I probably covered off about 10% of the functionality of SalesMatrix in the last half an hour. What SWOT was designed for was to simplify the key information within SWOT so that a sales rep is empowered to do their job with key information that basically allows them to do that retention of revenue and then cross-sell and upsell better than just what they can do with their own knowledge. It's informing their decision and suggestive selling. We also have obviously the product SWOT side of things, which can inform the warehouse manager and the purchasing manager around the key information. But to understand SWOT, the basic premise is that there's a series of AI algorithms that have been built up over the years through our understanding of SalesMatrix that run within a cloud environment. So what we will do is we'll pull your data from your Attaché or other ERP system. We'll run a series of analysis over that, and then we'll present that back to the sales rep as a plain English opportunity, strength, weakness, or threat. I start with opportunity because that's where a lot of our customers like to focus, but we break it down into that SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and we present it in plain English. The way that it works is that we have basically a script similar to the way SalesMatrix worked, but slightly different. This script runs through our cloud solution, and it pulls that data up into our web server. We are then pulling out the customers. We're pulling out the contacts so that the reps have the key information such as customer name, but also the people within the organization from your ERP or Attaché system. We're pulling out the products, the reps, and the transaction information. What we then do with that is we basically sync the data to the database and then run a series of algorithms over it over a period of 24 hours. So what we're doing is this is constantly being refreshed and run in the background, and we're running analyses that then update the scripts that come through to the reps. So effectively, the data gets updated typically overnight, and then the strings of information about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are all being updated constantly as that information is coming through. Those strings are actually customizable. We've created a format we think makes sense to most people, but if you have different terminology that you want to use, you can change the actual way that the text strings are built. The data is updated to the user's app when they basically log in. So if they're not logging out of the app, they're going to be looking at the data as it was last time they logged in. So we do recommend people are logging out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to jump into my phone and basically show everyone this product. I just need to switch views. I won't be a moment. It just takes a little bit to start up on my phone. I've got to get Zoom running first. Well, that doesn't help. My password has just reset. Let me just join a meeting a different way. Eight 6 7 2 8 4 2 4 8 7 3. All right, we're operational. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. And you're now on my mobile. I'm going to open up SWOT, and I'm not going to log in as one of my customers. I'll log in as SWOT.solutions. Okay, so I've just logged into SWOT. The first thing that it presents me with is the list of customers. Now, this list of customers can be filtered relative to the rep. So basically what you're seeing here is the customers that are relative that I've been allowed to see within my SWOT system. The color coding is very important. The color coding, the dot on the left represents where the customer sits from a revenue perspective. So again, getting back to the traffic lights that you saw in SalesMatrix, the red dot represents this is a low revenue customer. Amber is in the middle and green is a high revenue customer. The color coding of the name of the customer represents where they fit as far as margin as a percentage. So yellow would be hard to read, so we make in the middle black instead of amber. Red represents basically a low margin customer and green represents a high margin customer. You'll then ask me, what does blue represent? Blue represents a customer who has no transactions or a prospect, and gray represents there's not enough transaction history for us to actually categorize that person. They have had transactions in the past, but nothing recent that would warrant them being categorized as a high or low margin or revenue customer. So I'm just going to jump into a customer here who is a high revenue average margin customer there in the middle called Allen's Extruders. So what SWOT will do is it will break down my customers in the information about this customer into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I can see that this customer has bought off me 111 different times. They've purchased every 4 days on average, and they're buying 34 products off me. So here's my 34 products that they're buying off me on a regular basis. I can drill down and see what they are, and basically when I'm about to visit this customer, that's a good thing to look at because I know what I should be selling them. From a retention perspective, what have they stopped buying off me? If you're dealing with retailers, often the shelf label can fall off or one of your competitors intentionally rips it off. I used to work in supermarkets at university. I know what happens. Effectively, these are the products that they used to buy that they're no longer buying off us. Now, you may have something that is a superseded line and it may show up here. I can basically drill down on that product and I might say that I want to hide that item. I don't want it to show as one of the products that they've stopped buying. And that will basically disappear from my SWOT analysis. The opportunities area is probably the most used area of SWOT, which is let's do a comparison on this customer versus what they basically what others within the similar buying habits or groups are buying. So I can see that similar customers have bought these products that these guys have never bought from me. I can see that they're basically, I've made a note here that they're buying aluminium from one of my competitors and we really should be buying from us. Threats, in this case, the customer has no threats, but basically the threats would be things that are trends to the negative that we should be worried about, such as margin percentage slippings and those sorts of things. Where we run some algorithms that aren't necessarily considered as strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, we will present that as a note. And one of the ones that we do, as you can see from the screen, is when they buy. If we see a pattern to their buying, like they buy on a Friday, we will present that as a note. You can add your own notes, but basically those notes are there. For those familiar with SalesMatrix, you'll see along the bottom activity. That screen is very familiar to SalesMatrix users. This shows me my activity of this customer by product, and I can change that by value, margin, and units. This graph basically will present this year. My data is a little bit old, so the data is not presenting, but it's a similar graph to what you see in SalesMatrix. Who the contacts are, again, this is pulling out of your attache or other ERP system. It will pull those contacts through, and I can ring them directly from the contacts area. I can send them an email, all using my phone. A profile of that customer, including the way they're grouped coming out of your attache or other ERP system is here, but I can also start adding additional groupings within SWOT itself. The better the groupings, the better the artificial intelligence engine is at working out correlations and opportunities for upsell, etc. That's effectively SWOT from a sales rep's perspective. It is really simple, is really targeted at reps being able to understand the data behind their customers. There is abilities to look at some top trending customer opportunities, who's buying this week, this month, this year. What are the best opportunities within my customer set? You know, Bowers Manufacturing, if I look at their opportunities, similar customers have bought all these products. These guys have never bought those products. So the algorithms are determined that this customer's got a lot of opportunities there that have significant impact on your revenue. I can also basically favorite certain customers so that when I come in, I'm able to look at that. I can set reminders for myself, and basically the last thing there, which I'm not going to go into today, if you want to see more of SWOT, there's a session running both on Wednesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. It's a half-an-hour session where we're going to jump into SWOT in detail. But hopefully from that quick demonstration, you can see what SWOT is all about. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm basically just going to switch over back to my PowerPoint slides and finish up. One thing that's really exciting, those of you who are using SWOT, we're just about to launch, and there's a beta available, our new admin portal. The attaché customers, you may have been using our browser, swot.solutions.com. Oh, sorry, swot.solutions. The reality is that product is now redundant. You really should be switching over to our mobile app. We have a Windows version and this admin portal, which ultimately makes the functionality of the browser version redundant. The modern solution is about a smartphone app or a tablet app, which is what we've really built out. It's a completely new code base, and all the administrative functions are now available through a browser where I can manage the active and inactive customers, etc. If you're currently using SalesMatrix and interested, we have a special offer. We basically will set you up with a free 30-day trial. Our normal trial is 14 days, but for SalesMatrix customers, we'll extend that out to 30 days. Keep in mind, there is no lock-in contract. We believe firmly in getting value out of our products, so we just basically have a month-to-month proposition. You keep using it until you no longer see value in it. We hope that you see value forever, but basically we are willing to put it on the line that says, well, you can cancel any time. We'll also do the setup for free. Normally, basically, there's a $1,500 charge to get the configuration set up and get your groupings right, that sort of stuff. We're prepared to get the full configuration done free of charge for the existing SalesMatrix users. Email me now, matt@salesswot.com, if you're interested in finding out more. I mentioned the dashboards at the start. Today wasn't about showing the dashboards, and in reality, this is for those customers who may go, you know what, I really want some traditional reports that are print out from my board once a month, or I want some traditional sort of A4 style reports or dashboards, and we've been looking at things like Power BI or Tableau, and we're not really seeing what we need. We do have the capability and a synchronization tool that allows us to basically build out basically any reporting that you want, and it doesn't have to be limited to sales reporting. It can be anything that you want reported on. If this is something that is piquing your interest, again, please shoot me an email. We're not going to sort of jump into that product today, but it is available. Just a reminder, at the start of the session, I mentioned that we'll do a free script review for all existing SalesMatrix customers. Have a review of your groups, and particularly for the attaché customers, whether you're using tables or views, to make sure it's operating to its optimum. Reminder as well, we've got basically sessions available for SalesMatrix Advanced. The session for Wednesday on SWOT is now full. There are tickets available to the repeat session on Thursday, which is, again, around SWOT, going more detail on what we covered off today. If you just go to salesmatrix.eventbrite, or I've probably inundated you with enough emails over the last week or so. If you haven't got the email, just go to salesmatrix.eventbrite.com and you'll see the full list of available sessions. But if you are interested in SWOT, Thursday would be the best session at this stage based on numbers. If you want to know more about SalesMatrix, I really recommend coming to the advanced session tomorrow. Again, we're not going to cover the full product in an hour, but we certainly will cover a lot more than we did today. I'd like to thank you all for your attendance. Apologies, we've run a few minutes over. There's a lot to cover. You've got my contact details there on the screen. Please feel free to reach out any questions that you may have, any questions whatsoever. Give me a call on my mobile, shoot me an email, and we'd love to help. Wish you all the best, and we'll be in touch. Thank you for your time.